It's about the festive buzz. Now, the festive buzz has begun in a big way. And on the back of this buzz, e-commerce companies seeing this huge surge in demand. It happens every year, but things are changing on the ground. Our reports say that these e-commerce companies are under the scrutiny of the government for using what is being referred to as dark patterns. Now, what are these dark patterns? How do these e-commerce companies tap curious cats, as it were? And how can you as a consumer be careful, avoid these tactics to not buy products that you don't really need? Also, the question is a crackdown on these e-commerce companies expected anytime soon? We're going to discuss all of this, but before that, let me get things in perspective for you. And for that, my colleague Sumita is joining us just to get us a sense of what these dark patterns are. Sumita, if you can explain to us, our viewers, about these dark patterns. And this is something that we are seeing grow more and more among sellers to be able to exact sales, especially during festive times. Tell us what dark patterns are.
Yes, in fact, the government is planning a crackdown on e-commerce companies after reportedly getting several complaints from consumers. What are consumers complaining against? Well, they are reportedly complaining against online companies that seem to be flouting norms related to dark patterns. And this is specifically with respect to the ongoing festive day sales. But the question is, what are these dark patterns? Well, dark patterns are deceptive techniques which are used by online platforms that are used with the aim of luring consumers, such as sneaking something extra into your cart during checkout, or creating a false sense of urgency by saying only one item left, or actually even forcing consumers to take memberships. Now, these patterns are most prevalent in advertising, and they're used to entice customers into buying more than just one product. Sometimes it's more expensive as well, and they are ending up paying more than what was initially disclosed. Now, dark patterns also fall under the category of Unfair Trade Practices Act, which reportedly has also been a cause of concern for the government earlier as well. Reportedly, its categories such as fashion, personal care, e-commerce, foods and beverages, along with the finance, which are facing the most number of violations. And these become even more severe, especially during the festive period, which, remember, is the largest consumption period for brands across the country. And in some cases, it contributes to 35% of annual sales for several consumer-facing companies. Now, last December itself, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, which actually oversees the CCPA, it notified rules to prevent disruptive behavior of e-commerce firms by defining 13 practices. It termed them as dark patterns and categorized them as offenses under the consumer protection laws.
Sumita, thanks very much for setting the context for my discussion with brand guru Harish Bijur. He's joining us on this edition of Business at 9. Harish, by way of practices that brands employ in the digital era, some of them are circumspect. Tell us why they do that in the first place. Of course, the whole thrust is towards getting higher sales numbers. There's lots and lots of competition. But at this point in time, for a brand to be able to get into something that we are referring to as dark patterns that is becoming that much more prevalent, why do you think that's happening truly?
Well, first of all, these are festive times. And during festive times, everybody gets into the mood and says that the festive moment is when the consumer wallet is the weakest, in the sense that consumers open their wallets. A fair number of consumers save money to spend during the festive moment. And therefore, the e-commerce portal, the D2C portal, the quick commerce portal, and also the physical stores are all ready to welcome customers in. When it comes to dark patterns, we're really talking about, bait and lure. And bait and lure, which is not as obvious as it used to be in the older days. Bait and lure, which are reasonably surreptitious, which are subliminal, which are pushy, which tend to upsell, and which tend you to get deeper and deeper into the spend cycle. And half the time, a bait and lure end effect is that you're landed with a product or a service which you don't really need. And I think that is what needs to be stopped. We need to be stocking stuff which we really need, which we're going to use, which is going to be of a utility nature for yourself over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. Not something that's going to come in and you'll wonder what to do with it.
One level I want to ask you about whether this is a good practice for a brand that's looking at a long run to be able to develop that kind of relationship with consumers, whether that's a good thing, something that you would advise them to go with, because perhaps they'll come to you and say, we want to up our sales figures. Now tell us about branding solutions to ensure that. What would you tell them?
Well, my answer to them is, hey, listen, the most important element in this entire buying and selling mix, whether it be festive or non-festive, it is the consumer. Just as long as you take care of the customer and the consumer, you're not going to go wrong. But if there is a short-termism in your head to say that, hey, listen, in this 1 month, I need to make sales which is worth 4 months, and I need to load because if I don't load, my competitor will load. I think you're doing wrong to the customer. Because sometime or the other, things come to roost. The customer realizes that I've been rooked, and nobody likes to be rooked. Everybody wants to imagine that they're intelligent and they're making an intelligent purchase. And therefore, dark patterns, aren't really healthy. So I don't encourage marketers to bite into dark patterns. I tell people, postpone your sale, but keep it reliable. Because a customer, once he, she, or they trusts you, they're going to be with you here.
Consumers, Harish, as far as they are concerned, in the digital era, for the kind of purchases that are made, and I know that Mr. Goel himself, when he spoke about e-commerce and the growth of e-commerce, it's been unprecedented, the levels at which it is rising at this time. Is there something fundamentally wrong in how the entire consumption culture is growing in India in the digital age that we need to be wary about, that allows dark patterns and other such practices to come through from the selling side?
Yes, I think definitely there's something negative about it. Now, let's look at what's been cobbled together on e-commerce sales. We're talking about 55,000 crores of Indian rupees that's been cobbled together. Now, listen, guys, this is a really big number. And it is all about saying, a postponed buy has been preponed. So who's bearing the burden of it? The burden of it, of this expenditure, is being borne by the consumer. So instead of the consumer spending on you with a little more rational thinking, the consumer has been made to spend on you with the dollop of irrational thinking all of a sudden. And over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, the consumer is going to realize that, hey, I did wrong. For instance, let me give you one dark pattern habit. I mean, I have a list of 23 dark pattern habits. Let me talk just about one. One of it is called the buffet effect. I call it the wedding buffet effect, or let's call it derogatorily the conference buffet effect. Now, what really happens is there's a sales conference going on, and in the middle, there is a buffet, and there are 200 people out there. If you really look at the way the plates are grabbed and the stuff is actually put onto your plate, literally everything is put onto your plate as if that food is going out of fashion. So there's plenty for everyone. But then, the buffet somehow creates a kind of a feel that there isn't enough. You might as well take the best pieces now, because otherwise the best pieces will go and you'll be left only with the gravy. Okay? Not really. The buffet gets uploaded all the time. So what really happens is you load your plate and you waste a lot. But who pays the price for that wastage? In the case of the buffet, it's the restaurant food that goes waste. You're not paying for it as the person who's loaded your plate. But in the case of an e-commerce buy, my dear folks, you are paying for it because you have loaded irrationally, all of a sudden, stuff which you thought is important. It's going out. It's the last 18 pieces pending there. It's going. This color is going out of fashion. This model is not going to be available. This entry-level insurance, which you will get, is only for the first 1,000 people. This warranty extension is going to be only for, this is what I call discount washing. And I think that practice must stop.
So if that practice has to stop because there is so much of change that is coming through with all the online shopping that we do right now, is it remarkably different in the way sales are pushed in online sales as opposed to what we have experienced by way of offline sales. What has changed most dramatically that affects us as consumers?
Okay. See, in the case of offline sales, advertising was the culprit. Advertising was that intermediation device which came in and said that, hey, this is what's happening. Rush to your store and pick it up. And then, when you went to the store, you got something, you got a 100-gram pack with 10, 20 grams more on it. You got an off label of ₹5 on it. You got a steel tumbler on it. You got something else on it. But then, all that was reasonably okay because it was reasonably physical. It was very tactile. You landed up at the store. There were many points till you landed up at the store. You watched the advertising. You sat back home. You sat in your car or took on your scooter or a tuk-tuk and went to the retail outlet. You had plenty of time to think. And even at the retail outlet, you have plenty of time to think. But e-commerce, my dear friends, is that immediacy factor. The first 40,000, the first 1,000, the last two pieces remaining. It happens in ticketing as well. Only 2 tickets left. It happens in. So there's a fair bit of discount washing, which actually pushes people. And psychologically, people tend to get pushed that much more when you're all alone sitting inside a room and it's 2 a.m. in the morning and you're shopping. Your mind is reasonably fuzzy. And I think, you tend to bite. And sometimes that bite is a bad bite. So I think, e-commerce is subliminal. It's psychologically, it is that much more persuasive. Add to it the impact of AI. The machine out there knows your URL, and the machine knows what you did last summer, my dear friend. It knows everything you did last summer.
Yes.
It knows everything you carried on that holiday. It's everything you.
It knows everything that you're seeking right now.
It knows what you bought last Diwali.
It knows everything that is.
Pumps that up.
It knows everything that is lying in your shopping basket in that cart, which you haven't purchased, and will keep reminding you and telling you that you can buy this. And now the prices have dropped. It will keep
absolutely
bombarding you with messages.
Remarketing.
Exactly. So all of that
remarketing is a big thing. Have you seen what happens?
Yes.
Yeah. Because, you suddenly tend to think that your Insta handle is actually listening to you.
And it happens all the time.
You suddenly think something and suddenly you get 20 different stuff landing up. All this is tactile stuff. Stuff is happening, guys. The URL is being watched. You're being tracked. And actually, you're getting exactly what you want. And guess what, consumers? You're getting what you deserve. Sadly.
But when you talk to brands, Harish, you're always talking about keep your consumers first. How many brands today are following that entire motto, that entire credo to keep consumers first at the heart of sales? Or is that changing as online shopping grows?
Yeah, it's changing. Because, physical shopping is relationship shopping. You might realize that, many of us call our shopkeepers Anna. Anna is brother. Or in Kerala, I might call it Chaitan, Bhaiya, Guru. I don't know. I mean, you call them as a relationship because it's a relationship. You know the retailer, retailer knows you. It's a relationship. Retailer won't do anything wrong to you because you need to go back to him. But in the case of e-commerce, the retailer, the e-commerce portal is fighting against another giant. So there is giant A and there is giant F, whatever the alphabet is. And giant A wants to cobble together everything because if it doesn't cobble all the sale together and get it for itself, giant F will take it out. Because what's the difference between one e-commerce site and another? Hardly anything. The same brand is available on every site. Actually, it's possibly the discount, possibly the service, much else.
So to be able to be a discerning buyer at this stage calls for all your mental faculties to be alert and not fall for many of these snags and dark patterns as they grow brighter, as AI comes to the fore and brands start using it to their advantage to push sales and get their targets met, especially in festive times when there's so much competition. They want to ensure that these targets are met. It is going to be a difficult ask for consumers going along. But of course, we will seek your help from time to time to keep our minds focused. Harish Bijur, such a pleasure having you on Business at 9. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.